Updated, husband's nephew insulted me, so we cut off their college funding. Original post, I, 39F, have been married to my husband Nick, 42M, for 15 plus years. It has been a very peaceful ride for me. The only trouble we had was because of our infertility. Due to a medical condition, we couldn't conceive. It was shattering because we badly wanted to have a child. The adoption law is very tedious in our state, and we also have demanding jobs. So my husband and I decided not to go through with adoption. It doesn't make sense to adopt a baby and then not give them time. Instead, we decided to help needy children and also took up the responsibility of funding the education of our sister-in-law's kids. However, a recent incident has made me question this decision and reconsider funding them because of their entitled behavior. A little backstory. My sister-in-law got divorced when her kids were small, and since then, she has been struggling to make ends meet. Her husband was abusive and an alcoholic, and the child support she received was the bare minimum due to his low income. She works 2 jobs, yet her limited income makes it difficult for her to cover the expenses of their education, which is why my husband and I decided to pitch in. Sister-in-law's 3 kids, Ava, 23F, Ross, 20M, and Rustin, 17M, were once great kids. However, the boys have seemingly lost their way, while Ava, her daughter, is a total rock star. She graduated from college with distinction, has started her career at one of the most reputable MNCs, and is crushing it. Sister-in-law, and honestly all of us, couldn't be prouder. She had always been the smart and sweet one, and it's amazing to see her thrive. Sadly, the same is not true for the boys. Ross and Rustin were also bright as kids, but as they entered their teenage years, they lost interest in studies. Now the situation has gotten so bad that I had to write a post about their behavior. It all started to go downhill when Ross graduated high school. We asked him about his course details so we could plan the funding for his college tuition. He shocked us by saying he didn't want to go to college and instead wanted us to give him the money in cash. My husband asked him what his plan was, and Ross said he wanted to start a business. Fair enough, but what business? Ross had no clear answer. He said he had something in mind, but nothing concrete. We said we didn't need a blueprint right away, but at least we needed to know what business idea he wanted to pursue. He gave us a superficial brief that he wanted to start an online business. My husband and I were skeptical about investing in his venture because he wasn't clear about the idea and he had no business skills. We didn't decline his request right away, but asked him to give us some time to think it over. He said cool, but a few weeks later, he started following up with us regarding the money as if we owed it to him. After a lot of back and forth, my husband and I told him clearly that we didn't trust his business acumen and wouldn't be investing in it. He flipped out and threw tantrums, not at us, but at my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. His point was that the college tuition we kept for him was his money, so he should be allowed to do whatever he wanted with it. I didn't find logic in that entitlement. Yes, we took the responsibility of funding their education, and we do have the means to invest in them financially, but this doesn't mean they feel entitled to handouts. Mother-in-law tried to convince us to fund his business, but my husband said no. We don't trust his half-baked idea. Mother-in-law said we were faltering in our commitment to support sister-in-law's children. My husband made it clear that we would cheer for the success of his business, but not financially, at least not now. Perhaps at a later stage, when we felt confident about it, we might pitch in. We also said we were ready to pay for his college tuition whenever he wanted to go back to school. There was no discussion after that, but I heard mother-in-law was selling off her family heirlooms to fund Ross's business idea. God knows what happened after that, but Ross's business didn't see the light of day. Since then, we have been distant from them. Then spring came, and Ross knocked on our door to apologize for his rudeness. He intended to go to college and wanted us to bear his tuition. We gave him a chance, and he took admission, but since then, his attitude toward us has changed. He gave us the cold shoulder, nothing very upfront, but evident. Earlier, he used to be very friendly and chatty. Now it's just an exchange of pleasantries, and that's it. 2 to 3 months back, it was Rustin's 17th birthday. Sister-in-law invited us for dinner. It was going as usual. Ross also came over, and as usual, he was silent with us. Anything we asked, he replied with a nod or a single-word answer. But things took a turn when Rustin made a hurtful comment about me. He said, "How could Nick, my husband, find me attractive when I'm mid and ugly?" I stared at him in shock and disbelief. He then added, "It's hard to believe how anyone could find you attractive." I just couldn't process it. Nick flipped out and questioned him about his comment. The worst part was that before Nick freaked out, everyone else, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and Ross, laughed at his comment as if it were some kind of joke. Only when Nick got angry did everyone stop laughing. Mother-in-law downplayed it, saying, "He's just a kid and was being funny." Nick asked Rustin to take his words back and apologize right away, but Rustin defended himself, saying it was just a passing thought that he shared to lighten the mood. Nick got furious, stating that commenting on someone's appearance isn't humor. Rustin tried to further justify himself, but Nick stopped him and yelled, "Apologize now or face the consequences." The atmosphere turned silent. I was choking with embarrassment, anger, and hurt. Nick looked at sister-in-law for intervention, but instead of calling out Rustin for his disrespect, she said, "Calm down, Nick. People can have opinions." Nick stood up from the table and said, "We're not having any more conversations until all of you apologize to me." He patted me on the back and said, "Let's go." I stood up, and mother-in-law held my hand, saying, "It's his birthday. Let's not spoil the moment over a trivial matter. He's a child, but you're an adult, right? You should know how to handle this kind of criticism from kids." I shrugged off her hand and said, "He's not a kid, and even if he was, it's sister-in-law's responsibility to teach manners to her children." But clearly she has faltered. While we were having this conversation, I could see from the corner of my eye that Rustin and Ross exchanged looks and grinned. They were clearly enjoying the humiliation they caused me. I looked at them and said, "It's not funny. You guys are mean, and you will pay the price for your behavior." I left before anyone could react. A week after that incident, I came home to find sister-in-law and mother-in-law arguing with my husband. I entered the house, pretending they didn't exist, and went inside my room. Sister-in-law requested that I hear her out. Both of them apologized, saying they scolded Rustin after we left, and that he's guilty about his behavior. I said, "Okay, where is he? Why didn't I get an apology from him?" Sister-in-law said she was sorry on his behalf. The truth was that Rustin was too egotistical to apologize. But poor them, they needed our money, hence sister-in-law took one for the team. Her apology was so superficial that it meant nothing to me. Their point was that Rustin is just a raging teenager and doesn't know his boundaries, so he got carried away with his humor. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law were so rigid and would do anything to defend the boys. Even though in the end she said she would discipline her kids, her tone said otherwise. I said they better keep his emotions in check, and it should be the last time they spoke to me in this manner. Since then, I've been keeping low-key. Despite the incident, we processed the next semester's fee for Ross. Fast forward to a week ago, we attended Nick's grandfather's 75th birthday. Mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and the two boys were also present. Ava couldn't make it because of work. I was wearing a deep neck dress. I like wearing off-shoulder and deep V-necks. The moment I exchanged glances with the boys, their looks made me uncomfortable. They were ogling my cleavage. I felt so disgusting. I mean, they're half my age, and they were staring at me like that. But I ignored it and continued to enjoy the party with others. During the celebration, I raised a toast to Nick's grandfather. When I finished, everyone cheered, except for those two boys who were smirking at each other. They were making me so uncomfortable that I wanted to leave the party immediately. After a while, I was passing by them, and I sensed they said something and grinned while staring at me. It was no less than harassment, but when I turned to ask what was going on, they made up an excuse about talking about something else. The next day, I told Nick what had happened. He called sister-in-law and asked her to have a talk with her sons. She brushed it off, saying, "Oh, they were probably being goofy." This didn't sit well with me. My husband had a word with her, saying we're done paying for their tuition, so she better arrange something else to fund their education. Now, mother-in-law is hysterical and has been calling us nonstop. Nick and I are unsure whether we are doing the right thing by stopping their funding. They're still my sister-in-law's kids, and maybe stopping their education isn't the right way to handle this. Am I wrong? Now for the updates. Update 1. Thank you, people, for validating our actions. So Nick and I decided to withdraw the financial support we've been lending. We were not on talking terms with them after that incident. Nick said, "Let them reach out to us, then we'll break the news. We don't need them, they do." So we remained no contact with them. They too didn't reach out to us until they needed money. Rustin graduated from high school and wanted to get into a private design college that charges a bomb in tuition. Look at their ego and audacity. Neither sister-in-law nor Rustin showed up or called us. Rustin just emailed Nick the details of his college with the payment link. Like, wow. Nick royally ignored his email. Instead of calling or visiting us, he just followed up the email with a reminder for payment. What an entitled brat! Then, 2 weeks later, mother-in-law called Nick and said, "Honey, Rustin has been waiting on you for the payment for his college tuition. It seems you've missed reading his email." Nick replied, "Rustin who? I don't know him." She was silent for a minute, maybe confused by Nick's response. Then she said, "Got it, you're still brooding over that trivial matter. Didn't the boys clear the misunderstanding? Your wife must have marred the stuff." Nick was like, "Enough of the BS. We've taken a stand to cut them off completely. We don't know who they are or what they'll do in life, and we don't care." Mother-in-law tried to convince him, saying these conflicts shouldn't jeopardize their lives and that we should be forgiving and bigger people. Nick said, "No, thank you," and hung up. Within minutes, sister-in-law blew up Nick's phone. He ignored her calls, and she started texting him apologies. She said she would make the boys apologize in front of us, but we shouldn't deprive them of their education. Nick responded that it was too late and she should have woken up from her slumber long before. The next day, sister-in-law and mother-in-law showed up at our door. Nick didn't entertain them, saying, "We don't welcome disrespectful people into our homes or our lives, so you'd better stay away from us." Sister-in-law started crying and said she and the boys were sorry about what happened and wanted another chance. Nick said, "If the boys are really sorry, why didn't they join you guys to apologize?" Mother-in-law jumped in, saying, "You know the boys are young and hormonal. They don't realize the consequences of their actions, but we adults do. We should be mindful of our actions. We cannot let them pay such a heavy price for their childish jokes. Their career, their life is at stake." Her defensive tone boiled my blood, and I gave her the hearing of her life. I said, "Calling your aunt a book is not a childish joke. It is pure misogyny." And then gaslighting and proving me wrong in front of everyone was sheer evil. Commenting on my looks was tasteless and disrespectful. These actions call for consequences. You guys also play a role in this by enabling their behavior. I feel sorry that they will have to suffer because their mother did a terrible job raising them. They're going to suffer for their whole lives if they don't change their attitude, and no one but you, sister-in-law, will be responsible for that. They both turned bitter and looked at Nick for intervention, but he stood firm and asked them to leave. I slammed the door in their faces. I don't know if this was right or wrong, but this is what I did. The same evening, Ava called me and lauded me for my stand. She said we should have taken this decision from the very first instance when Rustin commented about my looks. Her mother, sister-in-law, had called me a witch, but instead got schooled by Ava. Sister-in-law wanted Ava to fund Rustin's college tuition, but Ava flipped out on her mother, telling her to stop coddling her sons. She said instead of defending them, she should hold them accountable for their mistakes and let them fend for themselves. Sister-in-law asked her to stop acting like my puppet and to stand by her brothers. Ava said she had taken her stand and didn't want to be associated with people who slut-shame women. It made me wonder about sister-in-law's character. On one hand, she's begging us to forgive her sons, and at the same time, she's bad-mouthing me in front of others. She doesn't even care for her daughter. Ava has just begun her career. How could she take care of her brother's education? Why can't they take out a loan if they're so keen to study, which I highly doubt? Update 2. Here's some new information. Let me begin by addressing a common question asked by my readers. Why did we even pitch in to fund these narcissistic children? Well, they were not evil as kids. All three of them were very diligent and well-mannered. Sister-in-law, though not very warm and friendly, was still civil to me. We took up the responsibility to shape their lives for a better future. The eldest, Ava, made the most of it and is now working at an MNC in Europe, but the boys lost their path. And sister-in-law didn't even try to bring them back on track. After we cut them off financially, I got to hear a lot of crappy things they were saying about me. They said I wore revealing dresses to compensate for my ugly face, that I'm useless, and that I've manipulated Nick into cutting off his own family, and so on. I took it with a pinch of salt. Sister-in-law had been cut off from her piggy bank, so naturally she would talk trash about us. I was glad of my decision. 3 to 4 months passed by, and one day Nick got a call from mother-in-law. She was in panic mode. Ross and Rustin were detained by the cops because of their association with illegal drug activities. While Ross was arrested, Rustin was taken into safe custody for further investigation. Mother-in-law pleaded with Nick to bail them out and save their lives. Nick hesitated for a while, but then it was a matter of their lives. Sister-in-law claimed that her sons were innocent and were made scapegoats by their friends. Nick wasn't convinced they were fully innocent, yet he gave them the benefit of the doubt and headed to the police station to get the details. I didn't stop him from standing by his family, but I didn't accompany him. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law were also present at the station. The cops said it was a non-bailable offense and that they had to appear in court. Nick involved his lawyer to get the details. The truth came out and exposed sister-in-law's golden sons. Ross was actually involved in the drug activities. He was running a racket supplying these banned drugs to college students. In fact, he intended to expand his racket to high school students through Rustin. The younger one luckily escaped extensive grilling because he was a few months away from being 18. Sister-in-law requested Nick to hire a lawyer for Ross and get him out ASAP, but after learning the truth, Nick refused to burn his money on him. He said, "Let the attorney decide what's best for him." Thanks to sister-in-law's stars, Ross got away with a lighter punishment because he was a newbie and had been lured into the crime world by a veteran in the racket. Ross was fascinated by the easy money it brought. The fee for bailing him out before the serving period was really high, and Nick refused to pitch in. After that, sister-in-law openly turned bitter against us. She even alleged that I falsely framed Ross to take revenge. And guess what? Some dumb people believed her story. I could only laugh at those who think you can fool the cops and play with the law and order of the state. Sister-in-law didn't stop there. She even disowned Ava for standing up for me and for not pitching in to pay a fortune for Ross's bail. Currently, Rustin is released from a correctional home while Ross is serving his prison time. I'm not sure how their careers and lives will mold after this incident, but I couldn't care less about it. Lately, mother-in-law visited Nick at his office and told him she was disowning him because he abandoned his sister and his nephew when they were at their lowest. It broke his heart that his mother never appreciated anything we did for her and sister-in-law's children. She never stood up for us, but she was quick to disown him when he refused to help her criminal grandson. We've learned this lesson the hard way. You can give your life for someone, but if the person doesn't want to see your goodness, they won't see it. We intend to remain no contact with them for the foreseeable future. Despite the trouble with them, we will continue to cherish our good bond with Ava, who has been nothing but loving and grateful to us. Story 2. I think I have forever lost my husband. Me, 35F, and my husband, 35M, have been together for 9 years, married for 5, and have a 2-year-old baby together. We were in a long-distance relationship for the last 2 years and only started to live together again as a family since 2 months back. Even though it was supposed to be exciting to finally be together, I feel like I'm living through hell. My husband is completely emotionally checked out. I'm mourning the loss of the bond I had with him. I'm mourning the loss of the friend I lost. I wish I didn't fuck up so bad. And now I'm bearing the fruits of my labor, I guess. But I was struggling myself too while dealing with my life getting worse and PPD PPA. I know that's no excuse, but how I do make my husband understand whatever I did was not purposely. I'm going through the greatest grief of my life right now, and I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I'm in therapy, and I discovered that I have an anxious attachment and I go in flight mode when triggered. I projected a lot of anxiety to my husband. I wish I knew better. I wish I communicated better. I wish I didn't go silent when he wanted to talk. I wish I made him feel valued. I wish I could undo all my mistakes. My therapist said it has gotten past the point of no return and to let it go, but I can't. I don't know what am I holding on to. He admitted that even if I give my 100% to win him back, he's not sure what version of him I'd get. He said despite him feeling so distant from me, he wants to try. I don't know if he meant it or not. His actions don't align with his words. He's too kind, and I guess he didn't want to hurt me, and that's the reason he said it. It's 3 a.m. where I'm writing from, and I'm laying in bed crying. That's what I do most of the time anyways now. And my husband is out partying with friends, which is a totally new and unusual behavior for him, but that's what he has become now. And I hate it. I hate the fact that others have become a source of his happiness now and not me. I hate the fact that he finds solace in others' company and not me. I'm jealous of his friends. I hate the fact that they get to laugh with him and not me. I hate how I'm just a nobody to him. On good days, I get a hi hello, even though we sleep in the same bed. We don't talk at all. For all the couples out there reading this, don't be like me. Don't take your love, your relationship for granted. Be so good to them that they think of you as the greatest blessing to them, and don't love them the way you think love is. Love them the way they feel loved.